let's go ahead and get things started here. And we have some housekeeping at the beginning, so we can we can cover that, and then we'll go right into it. So, folks, happy to make this interactive. We'll have some opportunities for Q&A as well. So we'll talk about that. But the main topic of today is how AI is going to empower the next generation of frontline workers, and I'm really excited to have this chat today in this webinar today with Jake Hall. So, without further ado, quick housekeeping: the webinar is being recorded. You're going to get a copy later in your inbox today, so don't feel like you got to take rigorous notes if you'd rather pay attention. If you got to leave early, no problem. And then if you've got any questions on the right side of your screen, you should see a Q&A box there, and it's near the chat, underneath the chat, and you can just pop some questions in there, and we will try to work our way through those live. Now, for those of you who don't know me, my name's Nick Haase. I'm one of the co-founders here at MaintainX. I work closely with a lot of our enterprise and strategic customers, work cross-functionally across a lot of our teams, and help share real-time feedback from our, what the folks on the front lines are sharing. I work across I'm currently leading our MaintainX community, and I've worked with developing digital transformation strategies for many Fortune 500 manufacturers now. And without further ado, I'll pass the mic over now officially to Jake to introduce himself.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. Hey, I'm Jake. I go by the name the Manufacturing Millennial. I've been in the industry for 20 years, starting out in the broom boy shop position on a manufacturing floor when I was in high school. And over those 20 years, I've had some incredible experience working in automation distribution, in system integration of incredibly large robotic lines, deploying digital technology and solutions at scale in some of those super large manufacturers all over the United States and across the world. And now I have the awesome opportunity where I get to talk about what I love most, which is manufacturing and technology and the generations working in the industry. And I get to travel to about, more events than Nick probably does, about 65 events a year, seeing what's new in technology, seeing the latest products, and having conversations on what we continue to do to make this industry better. So it's great to be here.
Excited to have you, and I don't want to try to beat you on 65, Jake. I'm happy to be a little bit under that if I can. But no, I really like
it's not a race to the top on those. It's not a race to the top.
Yeah, but it's a great. I mean, but at the end of the day, it is how you get to see. It's how you get that surface area that allows you to have these really great insights. So it's super important. I don't take it for granted that I have that opportunity. I'm sure you don't either. So, without yeah, here we go. So now I'm jumping straight into the Q&A, and we're going to talk a little bit about I want to set the context here. As we're talking about AI empowering the next generation here. Jake, you spend a lot of time with manufacturers across the country. This is not, and this also isn't something you just started in the past 2 months.
Yeah,
you've been doing this for a long time. What's changed about the frontline workforce in the last 3 to 5 years that's making training harder? And is it turnover? Is it retirements? Is it more complex equipment, processes? All of it kind of help set the stage here for what's creating some of this complexity.
Yeah, I think if we were to look back at like the last 3 to 5 years, I would say that has been the biggest impact in manufacturing in the last 30 to 40 years we've experienced in the last 5. And that's just because we had some things happen all at once. One is we had an aging workforce that was getting near retirement. We had a big thing happen in 2020 all the way up through 2022, which made a lot of these people who've been in the industry for decades, 10 to 1, 2, 3, 4 decades in the industry, and they retired. They left. They moved out, and we all of a sudden began to realize that from manufacturers, I don't want to say who took for granted the tribal knowledge and the skills that have been in the production and the processes for years left. And unfortunately, a lot of these companies did not do a very good job retaining and collecting that data and that knowledge. And so the last 3 to 5 years, it's making training harder. It's hard to train on something that the current workforce that's there does not have the experience to truly educate on.
Yeah,
And that's what
they
we're
were just
facing.
it used to be go shadow these folks,
You
and
can't do.
you'd absorb it, right? But those folks aren't there.
Yeah,
And
it's
I've
tough.
talked to customers who, Fortune 100 customers, and folks that I work um, that pre-COVID, their average frontline tenure on their front lines was over 23 years. It was like 23.2 years of experience on the front
Yeah.
lines. Post-COVID, by 2023, it had shrunk to 3.3 was the 3.4 was the average years of experience on the front line. And to say that that ripple effect was really jarring to the business is an understatement. So I think you called it out, and I think it's something that everyone's feeling, regardless um, of how what industry you're in right now. It
Well,
seems to be pretty agnostic.
so I've had the opportunity to walk on like 250 manufacturing floors in the last like 3 or 4 years. I get to see
Yeah,
so many cool places, and and from small shops to the big boys. And the one thing that I always kind of get a tickle out of is you walk on the floor and you have this owner who points and say, "Oh yeah, look at Tom over there. Tom's been there for 42 years and he
yeah,
just runs the entire thing. Tom's retiring next year." He says, "Man, that's great, Tom. Love it. Love
yeah,
you dedication and work in there." And I turn to the guy and says, "So does everyone know what Tom knows?" And he says, "No, no, Tom knows everything." And I'm like, that's a problem. I'm
right,
glad, I'm glad that you've created a culture of loyalty where people love working at your company. That should be
yeah,
celebrated. But at the same
yeah.
time, it's terrifying that how all of your operations, your process, the PM that you put into your products and your equipment are tied up into Tom. And like how and then the question that we have is, how do we take Tom and multiply Tom? How does Tom live beyond his retirement in the facility?
And I think that's how you get the folks like the Toms to be a little more excited and engaged and involved in this process. I mean, I was talking to somebody, they spent more time with planning and preparing the retirement party than documenting what their Tom knew, right? And like, Jake, when you walk the plant today, like, what's the biggest gap between how techs are trained and what the job actually demands? Like, how are we thinking about this? How are they thinking about this process, and where where are they falling short? Is it some of that
Yeah.
documentation of what Tom knows, or yeah,
Well, I think the one thing that training has always failed on is what we're trained on and what production is. I think are very often two different things. There's
mm,
never been a piece of equipment that I've seen deployed into the field that hasn't had secondary changes in operations happen onto it down the road. Materials change, processes change, temperatures change, environments change. The request of the specifications that the customer has after you give them parts change. I mean, I remember we would go out there, we would deploy a new piece of equipment and everything was right. It's just for so long they were making the wrong product, of shape or size, where their entire production shut down because we started making good parts for them after they've had bad parts for 20 years.
yep, yep,
I'm sure a lot of people have experienced, that exact same thing. But the issue is when we're going in there, we're training. What we're trained on is often not real world data and real world
yep,
information and real world knowledge. And I think it's one of those things is the people who are directly experiencing working on the manufacturing floor, they learn, adopt, and then they deploy what that looks like. However, I feel like oftentimes they miss circling back to where that, if you look at the entire PLM of a piece of equipment or a product,
yep.
they miss going back to then document that information. And it goes back to the whole entire thing. True data is what wins or kills manufacturing and production. And if you are not sourcing data and information, which resolves back into training, you're missing it. And unfortunately, as the industry that we have now, where you go back to I think you go back 20 or 30 years, the baby boomer and Gen X generations worked in manufacturing at the same job consistently for a lot longer. The tenure, as you're mentioning, the tenure of manufacturing a couple decades ago, the tenure, not 10-year, tenure of manufacturing a couple decades ago was high. People would stay there, they would work there, they would get promoted there. Now all of a sudden in manufacturing, we're in a very, volatile, industry and state where all of a sudden the people that you're putting in there may not be guaranteed to be there in 12 to 18 months. And that's not to say don't train them, don't invest in it. You have to do that regardless. But you need to find a way.
You got to ship product out the door.
Yeah. You need to find ways to manufacture to have better control on what that training data and information and that process looks like. And that's kind of where that's how I think AI is going to solve. That is, it's well, not necessarily solve. It's not going to solve your problems, but it's going to make it so your problems are not as troublesome and stressful.
All right, that's not too bold. It's bold enough, right? But you bring up a great point. Is there's very few things in the manufacturing, in the history of manufacturing, or in the history of production, whether you're running a facility, whether you're running a plant, where the process hasn't changed either. And so to your point, when maybe they did document the way something should be done, but that, how do you keep that up to date? How do you make sure that as you're continuing to improve and learn, as your equipment ages, it performs differently. The way you work with it changes. And how do you make sure that that knowledge gets captured on the fly? And so, in practical terms, like how's it going to improve training without replacing human expertise? Like, what are the sort of tasks or ways that's going to?
Here's the thing. I don't think it replaces human expertise. I think it captures human expertise and gives it in a way that is more retentionable and allows people to create decision-making and actions on it. I'll give an example. I'm going to stand above camera. I'll bring something to you. There's a story here where.
Thank God you're wearing pants.
See again? Wearing my pants.
Thank God you're wearing pants.
You scared me for a second. I'll give you an example here. For 80 years, however long Lego's been around for, forever, we were told to build through paper-based work instructions that would guide us through step-by-step processes on how to assemble and build something. And paper-based work instructions, while the pictures are there, the layouts there, it's kind of limited on how an individual can learn and understand what's happening. My 8-year-old daughter a couple weeks ago built this entire Lego Rubik's Cube solver. So she can go out there, you can put a scrambled Rubik's Cube in here, take it, press the button, and it will she can build a solving task. And the reason why an 8-year-old can do that now is because there's work instructions that are fully digital in 3D CAD where they can go out there and she can rotate the model around. If she wants to know what it looks like and she doesn't understand what the part is, she can click on the part and a question block pops up and it will show her the length. It will show her the color. It will show her what that part looks like from different pictures. All of a sudden, this digital sense of training and instruction and guidance enables so much more quickness of learning than the old paper-based instructions would have. And that's kind of what I wanted to show this, because I think it truly retains to what we can do on the manufacturing floor and what AI can do. AI can go out there and it can watch a video. And from that video, it can create digital work instructions on understanding what that operator is doing through this manual task. So if an operator is going up there and they have to open up the side of a large motor that's on the side of an air compressor that's running on there, they can go out there, and if you're wearing, VR goggles, as for example, you can watch that process, and then AI software can literally look at the person grabbed a wrench and then did this and took 4 things off. An AI model can now look at that thing and say, okay, operator grabbed a wrench and removed 4 bolts from the side of the machine. Now that's taking that information, it's putting it in there. You have a video of your Tom, right? Going back to Tom, you have a video of your Tom actually doing that entire preventative maintenance process. And now you have it documented as well to reference in the future. And so what AI did there is it didn't replace Tom, but what it did is it captured what Tom was doing in true Tom form. And now Timmy, who is the young buck coming up there, who never met Tom because Tom retired 5 years ago, can still watch what Tom did when they have to go back and fix that compressor again. Like, then I know, like,
or if you've only got one, or if you've only got one site with a Tom, and you've got 30 to 100 sites, now you can scale Tom, right? But, you can put Tom's knowledge in wherever else that asset exists in your organization.
1000%. Like that's what it like. Here's a rant that I'll get on for a second. If you are a OEM manufacturer and you're making a product, a repetitive product that is getting shipped out in either the US, North America, globally, and you do not have a QR code on the side of your machine that I can go up to and scan and take a picture of and do a search of all of the instructions, and you honestly expect me in 2026 to try and open up the side of a panel and hope the electrical drawings are still on the side of that panel and they're not gone? Like, you got to be out of your mind. Like, and it goes back to that entire thing of data is so readily accessible today. And AI can look at that data, understand that data, and then give you the best actionable decision to look at that data. That's what AI does in that aspect.
Yeah. Which I think is really interesting because you've talked about maybe it can show you a video diagram, maybe it can show you instructions, or it can build this just schematics. And so it's like when you think about what support looks like on the job with these AI tools, and like what format, people are like, well, what format is it going to work? And it sounds like you're kind of suggesting it's going to meet them where they're at with whatever they're looking for, right? So that if I'm somebody who is a visual video person, I need to see the picture. I can't just watch, I can't just read a string of text. It's going to be able to sort of help do that, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Is that the dream?
Absolutely. My thing that I look at is, I'm 36 years old. My first car I got 20 years ago when I was 16, actually. It was a 1996 Ford F-250. I went to AutoZone. I don't know, maybe Bill O'Reilly Auto Parts, wherever you guys are watching, the local auto parts store.
Yeah.
And I got a Haase repair manual. And you open it up, and if you want to learn how to replace an alternator, replace a belt, put in a new spark plug, do all this stuff, replace the brake pads. For a long time, you had to go to the back of the appendix and would say, hey, page 187, turn to here. You look in the section there, it'll walk you through. All right, grab a 10 millimeter socket. Well, shoot, I don't know how many 10 millimeter sockets are all gone. If you understand that joke, you've probably been in automotive. But for so long, that's how we do it. What do I do now? Go up to here, hey, Google, open up YouTube, and actually don't do that. But open up YouTube and show me a video on how to replace the alternator on a 1996 Ford F-250. And the great part about that is it walks you through, and that just goes back to the whole conversation on why video is the means of how we learn today. Like, right? If you have a spouse at home or a significant other and you want to make a new recipe, you're not opening up a Betty Crocker's cookbook. You're going out there and you're finding a video that someone posted on Instagram or TikTok or on X or on Pinterest. I don't know if that's still around or not, but like, that's how you're learning these days. And I feel like that's where the disconnect is in manufacturing today, is that.
Yeah, the lack of flexibility to sort of help folks. And I love, like, even just Alan just put in the comments, you're like, it's just, even if it shortens the time to research, like, you can find the manual, you can read the manual. That's been doing that for years, but why? If he doesn't have to, and he can just get it straight, get that information he needs out of it.
That's what I love Alan's comment there. It shortens the time to research, right? It's one of those things where I find myself in the last year, if I have a question I want to search, It used to be Google
Yeah.
forever. I'm going to ChatGPT or these other AI platforms way faster because I
Yeah.
feel like the data I can get. And here's the thing: I can still go onto that hyperlink and like through Perplexity, and I can say, "Show me your source," and then I
Yeah.
can then look at, okay, does this information make sense? But I can still use my judgment to determine, is
Yeah.
this what I want to do? And that's what I think in the manufacturing space is important, right? It goes back to AI is not going to, and that's why I like the name of this title here. AI is not going to replace the next generation of
Yeah.
frontline workers. AI is going to empower the next generation of
Sure.
frontline workers. And I think that's the
Yeah.
big thing that a lot of times companies and the general public misses on what we're going to do.
I agree. I think that's one of the to the industry at large's credit. I'm seeing that shift, that sort of mindset start to shift where there is a, that fear isn't gone by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a lot more optimism around that. But it's still, you know, there's this question around like why is ramp up taking so long? Why are manufacturers, where are they getting stuck? What are you seeing on the floor right now that is creating these friction points for them to kind of
Yeah.
start leaning into these
Yep.
processes?
Yeah.
Is it
Uh, what
like
are we doing
where's
questions?
that
Because
where's that bottleneck? Yeah.
what are we doing questions? I like Jack's question here, so I want to make sure we get to. Are we
Yeah.
doing saving questions at the end?
We get to, well, Jack's kind of topical here. We can jump in and take that real quick because I think it's great. Like, so how effective are middle schools? And you, as a father here who works very actively with a lot of robotics programs, things like that,
Yeah.
you're very qualified to tackle this. I think. How effective are middle schools through undergraduate schools preparing prospective frontline workers to contribute and be valuable employees in the decades ahead?
I want you to answer that first, and then I'll follow up.
Well, I think a lot of I'm not as big of a believer personally in the I think school as an institution or maybe similar to manufacturing, they're still trying to figure out how to catch up.
Yeah.
But the kids are going to be all right. They're learning on their own. They're digitally native and they're going into these tools and they're playing with them on their own for whether it's to play Minecraft or video games and design their own environments that are virtual, which like those are remarkably the virtual environments and the process of doing that is remarkably similar to a lot of design work that's being done in manufacturing floors, by the way. So it's when you think about it, are they wasting their time?
I might have lost you. All right, 1 second. Nick, I might have lost you for a second. Let's see. Well, I think we might have.
Transferable skills.
Oh, there he is. He's back now. Oh, no, we lost Nick. Well, Nick will come. Oh, he's back now.
There we are. Okay. I don't know what happened. It was the government taking me down.
Yeah, there you
You
go.
know?
Yeah, no,
Yeah, no. Yeah,
I
see, John got it.
I caught the first half of that. I'll add on to that as well. And Jack, I loved your comment. For me, I believe that starting in middle school. In fact, I think you should start earlier, starting in elementary school. I think schools are as effective as the investment that they get in from the local industry and community. And I believe that I'll give you an example. I'm in West Michigan. I think West Michigan has probably one of the most robust um, partnerships between education and community here in the nation. And I would argue that I would vouch for that. And I'll give you an example. I went to Granville High School here in West Michigan, not too far from where one of our other local. I saw a was it Brett located in Holland, Michigan, not too far from where he's at. Yeah, in Holland,
Yeah.
Michigan, and so um when manufacturers, when organizations and companies invest in local educational institutes to say, this is the knowledge, these are the skills that we need when you graduate high school, or when you go to get a 2-year associate's degree at GRCC, or you go get a 4-year degree at GVSU, where I went to, or Western, or all the other great universities right here in Michigan. The schools that are most empowered in communication with the local industry are what's doing best. And so in West Michigan, in Granville, they have 600 kids in their robotics program, and their
Wow,
district.
that's cool.
600 kids. And that's starting through second grade all the way up through 12th grade. That's Lego League, that's Vex, that's First Tech, that's FRC. They have BattleBots teams. They have drone racing teams. They have autonomous boat racing teams. They have like 17 different types of robotics programs
That's so
throughout the
cool.
entire thing. But here's the
Yeah.
really cool part. On average, the average student who graduates, who started the program, that senior will graduate, will on average get somewhere between $7,000 to $10,000 in scholarships to go pursue a higher education. The average student coming out of those programs. And like that just shows the impact of what local community investments do in an area. And I'll give a shout out to one of them. And that's actually, it's funny because it's one of your customers, Nick, Bradford White in Middleville. They gave a $250,000 investment fund into the Granville Robotics program and the tech growth. Like
That's amazing.
that's talk about, because like Bradford gets technology. Like they manufacture, I don't know how many thousands of water heaters every single day.
Yeah.
But if
They're one of the top in the world.
yeah,
Yeah.
but if you walk into that manufacturing floor, they understand data, they understand production visibility. I mean, but the company I was at, we deployed a lot of SCADA and software on that floor for decades. But they get it. So they understand that they need the people and the workforce to then keep that up and running to stay competitive in global economy and competition. So and so that goes back to that question that hopefully I answered for you, Jack. It's the success of the effectiveness of education is in direct proportion to the local companies that partner with those schools.
Love it. And so what can those companies do to help shorten that on-ramp time for these new hires then, and these folks? Like, what is it that they can do in the next 30 days? Because you can't just say, hey, the leadership team, we're going to shut the plant down for a month and recalibrate, like reinvent the way. No one has time for that. You can't take that kind of a hit. You can't shut your operations down. So how do you do this like in flight? What's something they can do today?
Capture data. Excuse me. I think it's one of those things right there. You already have processes in play. The thing you don't want to do is go and disrupt manufacturing processes and production without you understanding what is actually happening. So for me, I think it's one of those things. If you were to go out there, why am I what a Gembo walk? Gembo, am I getting that right? Gembo walk?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, Gembo walk, right?
Yep.
You go out there and as a leadership team, go out and truly understand what is happening on one segment of your process.
Mhm.
Just one. Just like, don't do everything. Just go out there and understand one process and collect data on it, and collect data from operator to operator and shift to shift and changeover to changeover and SKU to SKU, and understand what's happening through that data, and then look at how that data changes from day to day and shift to shift. And from that right there, you're going to have an understanding of what is happening in production. I think it's one of those things. Data's great. Actionable data is better. And so if you can go out there and you can collect data and then actually understand what that data means, that's what happens. And in 30 days, I truly believe you couldn't show me an application that I couldn't spend 30 days looking at, collecting data if you're not already collecting it, right? There's not like a gotcha of, oh, we're already doing all that. Well, you avoided my point, right? If you're not going out there and you're not understanding what things are looking like and you're not collecting that data, that's where I would start right there.
who should do that? Is that like the plant manager? Is it a line operator? How do you? Is there? Should there be like? How do you think? How? What are some like? How and like what kind of format do I need to go buy software first? What would you suggest to somebody who's like, Jake? Do I need a tool for this or you know?
I think you need before you need a tool is you need a champion.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
need an individual who is going to fight and battle for this change to happen. Because if it just becomes a assigned task of we're going to do it because we have to do it, listen, in the production floor today, unless you have someone who's going to champion a product, I could give you the best technology in the world, but it's not going to be successful because you don't have a champion culture of leaders
right.
and people on the floor who are going to make it happen. Who could be the individual? It could be anyone. It could be the frontline worker who is doing a better job actually capturing data to begin to write stuff down and saying, hey, these are 5 points right here. I'm going to write these down as these 5 things are going out there. Well, that data is then going to go to a technician or an engineer to say, okay, how do I pull these 5 tags from a PLC to then be able to know when is that data going to be collected and when do those faults or when do those errors happen. It's one
What
of
do
those
good
things.
numbers look like? Even like when if which of these things if it's above this reading or below, like what should create some sort of
Yeah,
what is there are the color codes accurate? If it's flashing red, is it actually bad or is that just some bug we haven't
exactly.
figured out and we don't bother with it? Yeah,
And the one thing that I cautioned, right? Don't collect data for data to die and on a Excel sheet or a printed grid engineered grid pattern. Like collect data and you're starting out, right? We're not
right.
getting you to the point where you got to go here and then you got to jump in head deep right away. But I think you need to go out there and you need to start understanding what data looks like. And what you need to do
Mhm.
then quickly is you need to be asking and looking at and understanding what this data is. What you don't want to do is you go out there and say, hey, I'm going to do 30 days. I'm looking at a bunch of data. And then you don't understand that data because it happened so long ago. I think it's one of those things. Look at the data, have a meeting, try and quantify what this data means. And then you can begin to then determine what do we need? What type of software do I need? Is it one of those
Right.
things where I could just take a sensor that has a magnet, slap it on the side of a motor, and from there I can figure out when my compressor is turning on and off. And I could do that. Is it one of those things where I could put an inline pressure sensor so I could figure out, hey, how much air am I leaking? When my
Right.
equipment's not running over time, could I get energy cost savings that way? What is the preventative maintenance feature? I remember I was walking through uh, a a pig processing facility, and they
Mm.
had um, a process where an operator every single hour had to go to 16 pieces of equipment and look at a gauge and write on that gauge down. And I'm like, what are we doing here, folks? Like,
Yeah.
like it's one of those things. Is data should not be a tough task to collect on there, and it's one of those things. Is like, and I think the big thing that what why going back to why I like going to shows so often is
Mhm.
we I really believe the general workforce, because they're so, I don't want to say trapped, but they're always focusing so much on production, they never really get to go out there and see what is actually available to them. And
Yeah.
because if you were to say, hey Jake, look at all the tools right now that can help me out with frontline workers and maintenance in 2026, and go
Yeah.
back and then look at it when it was available in 2023. Let's go back 3 years. It would be lights out difference. It's one of those things where the costs are so much cheaper. The fact that I can literally go and buy a box that has a sensor onto it, slap it up on the side of a machine, and I can get real-time trending line data out of a piece of
Yeah.
equipment that's going to cost me $67, 6 7. I throw in there with my daughter, a month for real-time data. And then you
Yeah.
have out there, and then great, throwing a couple lines to give you an email or a text
Right.
message when um you might hit above or below a threshold. It's one of those things where my biggest thing going back to these companies is don't be afraid for your project to fail. And and
Mhm.
and I think that's the biggest thing as well. We oftentimes get so focused on um this project's got to be successful, otherwise we're never going to do it again. Your project doesn't need to be successful. Your project needs to define what you learned, right? The whole point a lot of times, why do we do data collection? Why do we need to empower the workforce? So we can learn, so we can have a better understanding of what's happening, right? AI is going to give the next generation a better understanding of what's happening on the production floor to make decisions. All projects don't need to be successful. What a project does need to do is give you a better understanding on what you're trying to do. And if that's what you can define, if that's how you're defining your success, is I'm not defining my project because it's got to do this, this, and this. I'm defining my project
Right.
so we can learn what this, and this does. That's how you define and how you deploy a success, especially in that 30-day time frame. 30 days isn't necessarily I need this to work. I need to understand how it can work. And that's how you define it. That's how you define a goal.
Totally agree. And I think that to your point of like the rate of change, it's really hard to overstate how dramatically like the acceleration and the power and the value that AI is of today is where it's at versus a year ago. It's hard to overstate how wide that delta is for folks. So I have there's so many people I talk to both in this industry and then just out and about on the street,
Yeah.
Uber driver, wherever, who like I tried ChatGPT not too long, last year or whenever, and it wasn't that smart or that great. And I'm like, you gotta go back because one thing I try to harp on with folks right now, I read something really great the other day. I'll share with y'all is like the specific tools don't matter as much as the muscle of learning the new ones quickly.
Yeah.
Like AI is going to be changing really is going to keep changing. It's going to be changing fast. And the models that exist today are going to be obsolete next year.
Yeah.
The workflows people are building are going to continuously need to be rebuilt and reimagined. And AI will be a big component in helping people do that. But the folks who come out of this aren't going to be the ones that mastered this process by the way they tackled it the first time.
Yeah.
It's the ones who are you're starting to get comfortable with just experimenting and playing with you know trying new things even when the current thing isn't working right, getting comfortable beginning a beginner again,
Yeah.
and that adaptability is going to help you have that
Well,
durable
I think
advantage.
I think that's a great point from Jack. Jack asked in the
Yeah.
questions, um, Jake's perspective on how CMMS software vendors are proactively and successfully integrating, AI. Um, and there's a couple things I look at, right? How AI is being right now deployed in CMS. I think a couple things, right? You're building models that then you can look at historic maintenance data through failures, operations, predictive maintenance, PM windows and intervals. And what you're doing is then you're able to start determining what patterns look like. And I think that's a couple things, right? You're going to go and learn when you see pattern deviation. You're gonna build a nominal historic line of what a piece of equipment or a process or a piece of equipment is doing over time. And you're going to be able to go out there and you're going to be able to look at a piece of equipment and be able to determine, okay, what's going to happen, what looking at my historical means, what's going to happen next. So then, okay, how does that tie into the workforce? I think it goes back to the example of Tom has a bunch of senses. You can even say he has a sixth sense where he just has this feeling that something is going to happen. AI is that sixth sense of Tom where he can go out there and he can find outliers that we typically couldn't find and put patterns to. But what AI is doing is it's saying, hey, because of this, and this, happened, and then it just happened by chance. The machine had a failure and a fault, and this broke 24 hours later. You know what? That happened again. that happened again, and this just happened again. Wait a second. That's just like what happened 6 months ago. And to simplify that, right? You have a conveyor belt, and on the conveyor belt, you have a motor with a big bearing, and you're going into an airport that has these massive conveyor lines that are 500 feet long and have a massive horsepower motor onto it, or you walk into a large 3PL or distribution facility. If you've ever had a chance to walk into a DHL or a FedEx or a UPS or an Amazon, it's incredible. Like it's incredible how those facilities are set up. If you're going out there and you're listening to the vibration or oscillation or frequency of a motor over time, and it slowly starts to drift, that is the defining factor of what AI is doing. That's going to empower the frontline worker, because here's the thing: that frontline worker can now make a decision and act upon a piece of equipment before it fails. If and here's the thing: the worker still has to replace that if it fails now and we stopped it from happening, or it fails later. What happened though is all of a sudden we empowered the worker to change it before what I call shit hits the fan. And that's what we're seeing AI doing to really empower. And that's what a CMMS software can do to be that Tom's sixth sense. And here's the thing: if you guys ever create a figurine and you call Tom and Tom's sixth sense, I want some rights to that emoji that you guys put in your software one day where you call it Tom's sixth sense. It started here, but I think it goes back to that's what AI is doing, and that's what makes AI just so gosh darn cool today.
Yeah, I agree, and I think like as far as like how we're helping like be proactive to like how vendors are, and I can speak specifically to how we're approaching it, but I know the other vendors really well, and I know what they're doing, and the reality is like AI needs that, the underlying component of a lot of that story is it needs that foundational data, it needs it structured, it needs it recorded, and so you can't really do a lot. Like AI doesn't have a magic. It's not a magic genie in a bottle that knows your plant the way that it knows, the music, the history of music, right? Something that's public domain. So helping folks be able to capture that data in a way that like reduces the friction, so that they're not spending a ton of time typing it out. If there's ways that AI can subtly kind of make it reduce that friction, whether it's maybe I'm not a good typer, maybe someone who can speak and I can talk into the phone or my device and capture that know-how or that information. Ways that we can or ways that we can help connect to your machine data to help bring in additional data points that are historically being siloed and not captured and married next to that record of work. Those are some of the things that don't necessarily feel like AI the way that you might think of like in a sci-fi movie, but those are the critical foundational pieces that we can proactively do to help lay a foundation that that'll meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where I think the opportunity is for us to help steward and guide folks into this, shepherd them into this new world without having to retrain them on all these new concepts. It's functionally the same work, but how we capture it is what makes it more efficient.
And Scott brings up a great point as well.
Yeah.
With the AI model, it's as good as the input data. And I think
Right.
it's one of the things where the great part about it is AI does, while data is important, it also helps you define what data isn't necessarily good either. Like that's the entire thing. Like it's
Yeah.
it's it's like your model doesn't have to be 100% pure for you to
Right.
be able to find success, right? And that's where time comes in, and that's where reiterations and other stuff happens. But yeah, Scott, absolutely agree with that. I love it. You're using Tom as well. I really hope this becomes a thing. Tom. We'll have to figure out like what Tom can abbreviate to. But Scott, you're absolutely right. Data is so critical and crucial. And the great part about that today is it's so much easier to get data. Like that's the entire thing. I go back to the old school of me of 15 years ago, for a long time before the cloud really became an accessible thing in manufacturing, you had this thing
Yeah.
called a Purdue model. Right? It was a triangle where on level one you would have your sensors, level two you would have your PLCs and your control, level three you would have some sort of SCADA, level four would be your manufacturing, your MES, and then it would go up to
ERP, and
right,
cloud, and all the way up to that
and, and
IS-95. Yeah.
and for so long you had to go here to here to here to here to here. And by the time a lot of times you deploy those solutions, the amount of people that you had to get involved, the IT you would have to bring on board to sign off on doing something like this. So all of a sudden, set up something where you might not have currently a demilitarization zone set in place. There was a lot of factors that were
Yeah.
involved. The
And
great
things
part
didn't
about
integrate
that,
the way they advertised, right?
yeah,
Sometimes too. So even if you thought you figured it out, it didn't work the way
but
you thought it
but
would.
but the, but the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is, I can go. So I have a cottage up in Big Rapids, and this is just how cool technology is these days. I have a cottage up in Big Rapids, and I have a well up there that I'm not using all the time. So I have a piece of heat tape that's wrapped around the pipe to make sure it's warm. I can go out there and I could buy a sensor for $25, and I can go out and I can look at, here's my temperature over time that's happening. Here's my threshold. So if that pipe ever gets below 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it's going to send me a warning, and I can look at
Yeah.
my frequency change in data over the last month. So I can look up to here and I can know when it got hot, when it got cold. In Michigan, it's been cold for a really long time, so that electrical heat tape has been running overboard. But the fact of the matter is, if you as a individual consumer can go out and buy this technology to install on your phone, there is no reason why manufacturers shouldn't also be using mobile-based accessibility of production on your floor that's going to solve the
Yeah.
exact same problem as Jake's well heat tape. Like,
Right.
that's the world. And here's the thing: I don't have to buy a bunch of extra stuff, because I can just buy a sensor, put it to the heat tape, and I'm good to go. That's it.
Yeah. Which I think that's the two sort of themes here is like, as we think about how we're kind of marrying this narrative of how we're empowering those frontline workers, is the next generation specifically,
Yeah.
is that we're secretly sort of empowering the existing workers, and we want to make sure that we can capture everything from them. That's how we're empowering. AI is just making that data, that knowledge transfer a
Yeah.
lot easier, a lot more accessible, because the way we've been doing it for generations is just not going to kind of, it's not going to keep up. And then marrying that with the advantage of all of these machine data, and the accessibility of a lot of those, different, and the variety of different options that you have, I think is creating this really unique opportunity in time to take a step function leap ahead of, for dramatically less resources than it would have taken you 5 years ago
Yeah.
to do the same thing, let alone 10.
I think,
um
yeah, exactly that. And the one thing I think, going back to um the workers, is the next generation of frontline workers is not intimidated by technology. They embrace technology. They get
they
excited by
expect it.
technology. They're empowered by technology. So for
Yeah.
a technology that might be intimidating to an older generation, that's
Yeah.
because it's not the way you did things, can be very exciting and empowering to the next generation. I did a survey, and I asked a bunch of students. I said, what would excite you most about manufacturing? And they
Mhm.
came back with robotics being the first one they think is really cool. And then number
Yeah.
two and number three was digital technology and using AI in my job. Like, that is what is going to attract. So it's one
Yeah.
of those things where, how does AI empower? But you could also replace, instead of power, how AI is going to attract and bring
Right.
in the next generation of frontline workers into what we do.
Right. I love that. I mean, that's, I think, a really good call out, because it's about, as we head into this, there's going to be a labor shortage. There's just,
Yeah.
there's the math isn't going to work. to catch that up. So how do you make sure that you're building an organization that's going to make sure you can be towards the front of that list of where folks want to be, uh, and so you can get the best caliber of talent you can. I think is really important.
Yeah.
We got another question here from Travis that's I think important because people maybe this isn't their zone of expertise, but they
Yeah.
fear they're going to get asked about it, and there's a lot of reasonable concerns with respect to cybersecurity.
Mhm.
Like, is AI so new that the IT folks maybe aren't really sure what to do with it, and they can be the blocker, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, what are your kind of reactions to uh, how they should kind of think about cybersecurity with it? Is that I'm happy to take a stab at
Yeah,
that
yeah,
too.
and the one thing that I will look at doing, is a couple things. When there's AI, there's a lot of different AI solutions that are available. And AI goes well beyond what OpenAI is doing with ChatGPT. Like, I wanna say that right now. A couple of just quick open caveats. Don't upload data to a platform like a chat gpt or perplexity to any information that you wouldn't be willing to take and put in an email and send to your competitor. Like, that's where I would start with that. But with that being said, what we're getting out there really quickly is a lot of tools and solutions are allowing you to create your own training data sets to build off of, or training data sets that are being provided to you by a partner that allows you to avoid a lot of the cybersecurity stuff. That's one of those things, between the models that you're creating, the APIs that are feeding AI decision making. There's a lot of different things that you can go out there to make sure it's robust. I think it's one of those things where, there's due diligence that needs to happen and be evolved. I think the biggest reason why IT, for example, is fearful of AI is because they don't understand AI. I think it's one of those things. The more we can educate ourselves on how we can properly use it and how it can be properly implemented, um, it's gonna be that way. And I am not a cybersecurity expertise. When I was deploying stuff, we had a whole other group for that. Maybe Nick, you
Yeah.
got a little bit more to add on that portion as
I'll
well.
say there's two layers of risk. One you called out really well, which is the sensitivity of the information you're putting into some of these AIs. The free versions, uh, you don't want to put anything sensitive. It doesn't mean you can't go say you can't ask it questions like how should I run a 5S audit, or how do I help me think about how to incorporate some monthly OSHA inspections, self audits that we're going to do, things that
Yeah,
you everybody does. Which again, you may not want to send that to your competitor because you want them to have an extra step down, but your competitor has access to that online. They can
yeah,
look it up if they feel safe, right? And so there's an element to the free versions that you can kind of get some bearings around it and have some logic. But it's a good call out that you want to be able to look at vendors and that can give you clearly articulate how your data is stored and used and what's shared and what's not shared. If you get a vendor that gets all like glazy eyed and they don't know what to say to that, good sign that it's probably you're probably not gonna your IT team's not gonna like it. The companies that are really getting take every organization like ours, for example, is takes that extremely seriously, and we make sure that everybody in our organization knows how to help get through those concerns. And then we've got IT folks that can speak at an even deeper level on the
yeah,
technical specifications there. The other piece of it too that I think is important as far as risk is concerned is understanding you're not making cat memes. You want to make sure that if you're using AI that's going to impact real world industrial environments where people can get hurt if the wrong information is shared, you want to understand what are the guardrails in the models that you're working with so that it won't hallucinate or make something up that could get somebody hurt. If it doesn't know the answer, it should just say it doesn't have information that can support that action. So go ask your manager or go ask
yeah,
an OEM. That's another piece that I think is even as important as the cybersecurity component is really thinking about the risk there. So, but it's a good question. I think we may have time for one more here. We got from Brett, and then he says, "Love the thoughts on using an AI tool to read sensor data and work order data. When is MaintainX going to release something like that? Well, we've got some pretty exciting things happening today on the workflow automations front. We've got a product that we're presenting next week. I think it's being released. Um, it's in beta for sure. That helps with using AI to help connect the all of those sensor tags to the right um, tags and the right sensors and meters inside of your MaintainX instance, and then it can help suggest recommended workflows based on OEM information and things like that as well. So, for example, just to go to if there's a conveyor belt and you're putting in a sensor, a meter that's connected to the vibration on the motor, we'll be able to generate smart workflows that suggest that when it's out of this tolerance, when the vibration's too high or it's too low, here's what you should do, and it can automatically help you build that workflow so that you review it, you make sure you may want to tweak who it gets assigned to, and then from there it'll you can press play, go, and it's set up and running in perpetuity. So we're really trying to decrease the friction to set those things up while still making sure that there's humans in the loop to um, validate that initial assessment was correct, and then make sure that you can have an easy way to go in and modify that if as needed to meet the conditions of your operation. We've got a really strong team that we'd be happy to help set up a deeper conversation with and demo as well. And I think we're going to have some content in our pipeline here coming out to talk a little more explicitly about that too. So stay tuned. We're thinking deeply about it. We've got some cool stuff that's already out, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's been a big pain point for a lot of folks setting that up. So uh, that said, I know thank you all so much for being here with us today. I'm going to go ahead and do one more quick housekeeping here. If you want to learn more about if you haven't checked out our MaintainX Academy, we've got a link here. Happy to, feel free to check that out. You get certifications, guides, micro training. We got our MaintainX community. Definitely come and check that out if you have not before. We've got a lot of great conversations happening there. And if you want to book a demo to learn more, you can do that here as well. So thank you so much. We'll see you all at the next masterclass, and keep an eye out in your inbox for a recording of this when we're done. And last but not least, Jake, thank you so much for being here. If you do not, if this is your first time meeting Jake or hearing him, follow him on LinkedIn, follow him on all the social channels, Manufacturing Millennial. He's got great content. He's gonna I think you're gonna really enjoy all the creative things he comes up with. And
can Jake, I say one other thing real
final
quick?
Word, take it away. Yes, sir.
I saw some Texas names in the chat as well for people in Texas. I will be at Wrenchworks in Houston on March 5th, I believe. Right. Giving an hour-long presentation talking about this stuff. So if you are in the Texas or in the I know Texas is massive. So like if you're somewhere in Texas, check it out for a day. I think it's free. Is it free?
It's free. Yeah. We've got the event going on. So yeah, sign up today.
Come and hang out. Yeah. We're having good time and all that. So a lot more fun stuff. And I'll see you there, Nick.
See you there, Jake. Take care, everyone. Thank you.